There are 18 cheap things to stock up on right now. Ordinary items sitting on store shelves this week at completely normal prices, and by the time most people realize they should have bought them, the price tags will already have flipped. Here is the mechanic that almost nobody explains. When fuel prices spike at the source, whether from a geopolitical disruption, a shipping corridor closure, or a production cut, that cost does not reach your local store shelf immediately. It works its way through the system over the following 2 to 3 months. First, it hits the raw material cost, then the manufacturing energy bill, then the freight invoice, then the wholesale margin. And by the time the store manager finally prints a new price label, you have already missed the window to buy at the old price. That window is open right now. We are currently watching a freight cost shock move through the global supply chain in real time, driven by elevated fuel prices, route disruptions across key shipping corridors, and compounding tariff pressure on goods imported from Asia. And the items I am going to walk you through today are not the obvious ones. They are not generators. They are not freeze-dried food buckets. They are not the items already being talked about on every prepper channel in your feed. They are the items hiding in plain sight in your bathroom cabinet, your kitchen pantry, and your garage, items that are quietly, predictably, and soon going to cost significantly more than they cost today. I am also going to give you 3 frameworks in this video, actual decision-making tools, that will tell you not just what to buy, but why these specific items are prioritized, and how to apply the same logic to anything not on this list. By the time we reach item 18, you will have a clear picture of where to spend a modest amount of money this week in a way that will quietly save you a significant amount of money over the next 6 to 12 months. And you will have a filter for making every future purchase decision in this environment. Let us start. Item 1. Concentrated powder laundry detergent. The first item on this list is concentrated powder laundry detergent, and the reason it leads the list is because it perfectly illustrates the. Here is what that means. Freight surcharges are applied based on weight and volume. When diesel prices rise, carriers increase their per kilogram and per cubic meter rates. And that means that heavy products with a low retail price per kilogram, meaning cheap, heavy things, absorb those surcharges harder than anything else in a supply chain. Liquid laundry detergent is roughly 60 to 70% water. You are literally paying to ship water. Every bottle of liquid detergent in your store has a freight cost baked into its price that is proportionally enormous compared to the actual cleaning ingredients inside. Concentrated powder detergent, on the other hand, packs 3 to 4 times more washes per kilogram, ships in flat-packed cartons that cube out efficiently, and has a shelf life of several years when stored in a sealed container away from moisture. What most people get wrong here is thinking that liquid is more convenient and therefore worth the premium. That premium is about to get noticeably larger. The pro tip is to pair your powder detergent with oxygen bleach powder bought at the same time. Together they cover every laundry need: whites, colors, stains, odors, without a single liquid product in your laundry room. A 5-kilogram bag of quality concentrated powder detergent provides somewhere between 60 and 80 standard washes. Buy 2 of them today, store them in sealed containers, and you have taken laundry off your shopping list. Item 2. Bar soap in bulk. Item 2 is bar soap, specifically bought in bulk, 24 to 48 bars at a time, and this is where the weight to value framework immediately pays off, because bar soap is the single most freight-efficient personal care product you can buy. Almost no water weight. Flat-packed. Multi-year shelf life when stored away from heat and humidity. A box of 48 plain unscented or glycerin-based bars costs under $15 today and provides a full year of daily use for a family of. The supply chain exposure here is real. Almost all commercial liquid soaps and body washes rely on petrochemical surfactants. The raw materials are derived from the same petroleum chain. Petrochemical feedstock disruptions affect urea, polymers, and methanol, all of which feed directly into the manufacturing of liquid cleaning products. What most people get wrong is dismissing bar soap as outdated when it is actually a superior stockpile product by almost longer shelf life, better weight-to-value ratio, no plastic bottle waste, and unscented or olive oil-based bars have secondary uses, shaving, camping, fabric spot treatment that a liquid gel in a pump bottle simply cannot match. Store them in a single cardboard box in a cool, dry space. They will be there when you need them, at a price you locked in before the pricing cycle turned. And I promised you a tease at the start of this video, a framework that changes how you look at every item on any preparedness list. I am going to deliver that at item 6. Stay with me. Item 3. White vinegar in large jugs. Item 3 is white vinegar, not the single bottle you have in your pantry for cooking, but the industrial cleaning grade. White vinegar is produced domestically in many countries, including the United States. But the plastic jugs that contain it, the transport from production to distribution to retail, and the secondary freight legs all carry embedded diesel costs that rise every time the fuel price index moves. And here is the quiet power of vinegar that most people completely underestimate. A single gallon of white vinegar, diluted at a 1-to-1 ratio with water in a spray bottle, handles fabric softening and laundry, streak-free window and glass cleaning, descaling of coffee makers and kettles, weed killing in driveways and patios, surface disinfection in kitchens and bathrooms, and odor removal from fabrics and hard surfaces. That is 11 separate cleaning products replaced by one product bought today for roughly $3 to $4 per gallon. A case of 4 1-gallon jugs at $12 to $16 covers a household for 6 to 8 months of cleaning, food preservation, and garden management. Buy a case today, and you will not need to think about cleaning product costs for the better part of a year. Item 4. Baking soda in bulk. Item 4 is baking soda, specifically the 5 kilogram or 10 kilogram bags rather than the small boxes sold at retail. And this is a textbook example of the weight-to-value principle at work. Sodium bicarbonate is mined, processed, and then transported over significant distances before it reaches a retail shelf. It is one of the most freight cost-sensitive pantry staples per unit of value you can buy, which means its retail price is highly sensitive to changes in diesel costs relative to what the product is actually worth. The small retail box of baking soda is a price-optimized convenience product. The bulk bag is the same compound at a fraction of the cost per gram. A 5 kilogram bag today costs roughly what a 12-pack of small retail boxes costs, and provides 5 times the volume. And baking soda's uses extend far beyond baking. Cleaning surfaces and fabrics, deodorizing refrigerators and shoes, treating mild acid reflux, balancing pool and aquarium chemistry, suppressing small kitchen fires, and as a gentle abrasive for dozens of household scrubbing tasks. Pro tip: repackage into sealed mason jars immediately after purchase. Baking soda absorbs moisture and odors from its surroundings if left in an open bag, which degrades its potency. Stored sealed in glass, it remains fully effective indefinitely. Item 5. Canned fish. Sardines, mackerel, salmon. Item 5 is canned fish, specifically sardines, mackerel, salmon, and tuna. And this is the most undervalued food stockpile item in terms of nutrition per dollar. Here is the number that matters. A case of 48 mixed canned fish tins costs approximately $35 to $50 today and delivers roughly 4,800 calories of complete protein with full amino acid profiles, significant omega-3 fatty acid content, calcium from the soft bones in sardines, and a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. Food and beverage manufacturers are now in a difficult position. They have already used most of their pricing management tools, hedging contracts, reformulation, package size reduction to absorb the supply chain shocks from the pandemic years and the tariff increases that followed. What that means is that the next round of input cost increases, driven by freight surcharges and petrochemical feedstock price rises, has nowhere to go except straight through to the retail shelf price. And canned goods with long supply chains and heavy packaging are in a direct line of fire. What most people get wrong is treating canned fish as emergency rations rather than as a legitimate daily protein strategy. Sardines and olive oil on sourdough toast with hot sauce is a genuinely excellent meal. Canned salmon in a grain bowl with pickled vegetables is a complete nutritionally dense lunch. The stigma around canned fish is a relatively recent cultural artifact, and it will fade quickly when protein prices at the fresh counter climb another 20%. Buy a case now. Rotate it into your regular diet. And stay with me for item 6, because that is where I give you the filter that tells you exactly which items on any list are the highest priority to act on first. Item 6. Bulk black pepper and core spices. Item 6 is bulk ground black pepper and core spices. And before I tell you why this is on the list, I need to stop and give you the framework I have been building toward. I want you to have a filter, a simple, fast question you can apply to any item on any list, and it is this. Is this item heavy relative to its value? Is it made from petroleum-derived inputs? And does it travel a long distance before it reaches a store shelf? If the answer to all three is yes, that item is in the highest priority zone for price increases during any freight cost shock. Because freight surcharges hit weight, petrochemical input price rises hit the manufacturing cost. And long supply chains mean there is no short alternative route when primary shipping lanes get expensive or disrupted. That filter tells you everything you need to know about why items 1 through 5 are on this list. And it tells you exactly why black pepper is item 6. Black pepper is one of the most heavily traded and globally transported spices in the world. It travels from growing regions in Vietnam, India, and Brazil through 3 to 4 separate freight legs before it reaches the shelf in your store. It is heavy relative to its value per gram. And it is a commodity product with a shelf life of 3 to 5 years in sealed storage. What most people miss is that black pepper is also the single biggest factor in whether a pantry-based diet is actually sustainable long-term. Beans and rice and canned fish are nutritionally complete. They are not palatably complete. The difference between a meal you can eat and a meal you want to eat is often a generous amount of freshly ground black pepper. Whole peppercorns are the smarter buy. They outlast pre-ground by 2 to 3 times in flavor potency, and you grind what you need as you go. A kilogram of quality whole black peppercorns costs $8 to $14 today and lasts 3 to 5 years sealed in a glass jar. And now that you have that framework, every item from here forward will make immediate sense. Let us keep moving. Item 7. Dry yeast and vacuum sealed bulk. Item 7 is dry yeast, specifically instant dry yeast in 1 pound or 500-gram vacuum sealed packages. And this is one of the most quietly freight disruption sensitive items in any pantry. Here is why. Dry yeast is a living culture that has been freeze-dried and packaged in specialized facilities that rely on controlled supply chains for temperature-sensitive raw materials. And it is produced by a very small number of global manufacturers. The entire world's supply of commercial dry yeast essentially comes from 4 or 5 major producers. That means when freight gets complicated or expensive, the supply chain for dry yeast has no redundancy. No alternative sources. No substitute product. You either have yeast or you don't. 1 pound of instant dry yeast, which costs $5 to $8 today, will make approximately 50 to 60 standard loaves of bread. That is a year of baking for a small household, priced at the cost of 2 or 3 store-bought loaves. The pro tip that most sources miss: divide your bulk yeast into several small mason jars and freeze them. Yeast stored frozen in a sealed glass jar remains fully viable for 4 or more years with essentially no loss of leavening power. Just let it come to room temperature before using and it performs perfectly. When flour prices climb further due to grain transport fuel costs, having the yeast to turn that flour into real bread is the difference between a stockpile that... Item 8. Water bath canning kit. Item 8 is a water bath canning kit, specifically the enamel or stainless steel pot with a rack, jar lifter, lid wand, and bubble remover. And this is the tool that transforms everything else on this list from a stockpile into an active food production system. Here is the distinction that matters. Buying shelf-stable food ahead of price increases is a passive strategy. Learning to preserve your own food is an active strategy. And when grocery inflation is being driven by fuel costs working through agricultural supply chains, meaning both the cost to grow food and the cost to transport it are rising simultaneously, home food preservation becomes a direct financial defense mechanism. The barrier people have in their heads about canning is that it is complicated. For water bath canning of high-acid foods, it is not. Tomatoes, pickles, jams, salsas, chutneys, and high-acid fruit preserves are all water bath appropriate and beginner accessible. The process is essentially sterilize jars, pack food, boil for the specified time, cool, confirm the seal. A basic water bath canning setup costs $25 to $40 and will seal hundreds of jars over its lifespan. Start with tomatoes. They are the highest volume, most versatile preserve, longest lasting at 2 to 4 years, and the most useful in everyday cooking. And item 9 is the container infrastructure that makes your canning kit actually work at scale. Item 9. Reusable mason jars. Multiple cases. Item 9 is reusable wide-mouth mason jars, and the insight most people miss here is not about the jars themselves, but about the lids. Here is the thing about mason jars that the YouTube prep community consistently gets wrong. They tell you to buy jars. They forget to tell you that the flat lid, the actual sealing component, is single use for safe canning. The ring is reusable. The jar is reusable. But the flat lid must be new for every canning seal. And flat lids are a small, lightweight, high-demand item that disappears from stores during any supply disruption, while jars remain available for weeks longer. So the strategy is, buy a reasonable number of jars and buy 3 times as many spare lid packs as you think you need. A 12-pack of spare flat lids costs $3 to $5. Buy 10 of those packs for every 4 cases of jars. Beyond canning, mason jars serve as fermentation vessels for kimchi, sauerkraut, and sourdough starter. Dry goods storage for flour, rice, and lentils. Water storage. Sprouting jars for seeds and legumes. Cooking vessels in a makeshift oven or water bath. And organizational containers for seeds, small hardware, and medications. A case of 12 wide-mouth quart jars with lids runs $12 to $18 today. Buying 2 to 4 cases across different sizes, quart, pint, and half pint, gives you a storage and preservation infrastructure, and we are halfway through. Coming up, I want to show you the items that most prep channels completely ignore, including one that costs under $10 and quietly replaces 4 separate ongoing purchases. Stay with me. Item 10. Disposable lighters in bulk. Item 10 is disposable lighters, not 1 or 2, but a 10 or 20 pack bought and stored properly. The supply chain logic here is almost textbook. Disposable lighters are almost entirely manufactured in Asia. They use a butane fuel derived from petroleum. They ship in bulk quantities on thin profit margins per unit. And the combination of freight surcharges and raw material cost increases means small, cheap, thin margin items like these are the first to see production cuts or shipping consolidation delays when logistics get complicated. What that means in practice is that stores run low on lighters well before a crisis feels obvious at the consumer level. And you do not notice until you grab for one and the hook is empty. A 20-pack of quality lighters costs $10 to $15 today. That same volume at individually purchased prices during a supply crunch will cost you $3 to $4 per lighter, $40 to $80 for the same 20 units. The pro tip, store them sealed in a Ziploc bag in a cool, dry location away from direct heat. Butane does leach very slowly over time, and heat significantly accelerates that process. Stored properly in moderate temperatures, a lighter unused in sealed storage will retain full function for 5 or more years. 30 to 40 lighters in storage covers every ignition need, cooking, emergency lighting, camping, and fire starting for several years across a typical household. Item 11. Coffee beans, vacuum sealed, whole bean in bulk. Item 11 is coffee beans, whole bean, vacuum sealed, bought in a 3 to 6 month supply, and this is an item most people think about only after prices have already moved. Coffee is both a morale essential and a heavily freight-dependent product that travels further than almost any other food item before reaching your cup. Growing regions in Ethiopia, Colombia, Vietnam, and Brazil ship green beans through multiple freight legs across some of the most disrupted shipping corridors in the current environment. And coffee prices have already been through 2 significant rounds of volatility in the last 2 years, with Arabica prices experiencing roughly a 60 to 80% run-up on commodity markets between late 2023 and early 2025, before partial retracement. The specific insight here is about storage. Pre-ground coffee loses approximately 70% of its volatile aromatic compounds within 2 weeks of grinding. Whole bean coffee stored in an unopened vacuum-sealed bag retains full flavor for 12 to 18 months in a cool, dark location, and significantly longer in a freezer. Pro tip, buy vacuum-sealed whole bean bags and freeze them unopened. When you are ready to use one, let it come to room temperature in the sealed bag before opening. This prevents condensation from forming on the beans and degrading the flavor. Stored this way, high-quality whole bean coffee retains excellent flavor for 2 or more years. A 3 to 6 month supply bought at today's pricing is a direct hedge against a commodity that has already demonstrated its volatility. Item 12. Manual French press or gravity drip coffee maker. Item 12 is a manual French press or gravity drip coffee maker, and I want to use this item to introduce the second framework of this video, because it applies to every appliance decision you make for the next 2 years. Here is the principle. Every electric appliance in your home contains imported electronic components, a power supply, a circuit board, and proprietary consumables, all of which have separate compounding supply chains. When any one of those chains gets disrupted or more expensive, the appliance either becomes unavailable to replace, costs significantly more to buy, or stops working when the proprietary part is no longer stocked. A manual tool that accomplishes the same task has 0 electronic components, 0 power dependency, 0 proprietary consumables, and a price that is permanently locked at the moment you purchase it. It does not care about freight costs after you own it. It does not care about power outages. It cannot become obsolete. The French press is the perfect example. A quality stainless steel French press with a double wall body costs $12 to $25. It makes better coffee than most drip machines by preserving the natural oils that paper filters absorb. It doubles as a tea infuser and a cold brew maker. It requires no filters, no pods, no proprietary parts. And it lasts a decade or more with essentially no maintenance. Apply the manual versus electric principle as a filter to every purchase decision from here forward. When a manual option exists and accomplishes the task adequately, the manual option is the supply chain resilient choice in this environment. The next section of this list is the one most prep channels will never touch. These are the items hiding so far in plain sight that they disappear from view entirely. Item 13. Resealable storage bags, all sizes, large quantity. Item 13 is resealable storage bags, all sizes, bought in quantity, and this is where the weight to value framework and the petrochemical supply chain logic. These bags are made from polyethylene and polypropylene, 2 petroleum-derived plastics. Their raw material cost is directly indexed to petrochemical feedstock prices. And they are thin-margin consumer goods, meaning that any input cost increase flows through to retail pricing very quickly, with almost no buffer. A 200-count variety pack of assorted sizes costs approximately $12 to $15 today. Based on petrochemical input cost trends, equivalent purchasing in 6 months could plausibly run $20 to $28 for the same volume. That is a 40 to 80% price increase on a product you buy and use continuously. 200 to 300 bags across all sizes, sandwich, quart, gallon, and 2-gallon, covers a 3 to 4 month supply for a household that uses them actively for food storage, seed saving, document waterproofing, small parts organization, and portioning bulk dry goods. Pro tip: double bag anything stored in a freezer. The cost of a second bag is negligible at today's pricing, and the protection against freezer burn on bulk purchase proteins is substantial. Over a 6-month period, that second bag could save you significantly more than its own cost in prevented food loss. And item 14 is the one I have been setting up for the last 3 items. It is the under $10 purchase that replaces 4 separate ongoing consumable expenditures. Here it is. Item 14. Beeswax food wraps or silicone stretch lids, reusable set. Item 14 is a set of reusable beeswax food wraps or silicone stretch lids, and here is the payoff for the tease I set up earlier. This one purchase replaces 4 separate ongoing consumable expenditures that are all facing the same pricing pressure simultaneously. Plastic wrap, petroleum-derived, aluminum foil for everyday use, aluminum feedstock prices under direct pressure from Middle East supply chain disruption, single-use Ziploc bags for short-term storage, polyethylene, as discussed in item 13, and silicone bowl covers bought individually from a dollar store, also a polymer product with the same underlying feedstock exposure. 4 products, all becoming more expensive for the same fundamental reason. Replaced by one purchase. A set of 8 to 12 beeswax-coated cloth wraps, or equivalently a set of 8 to 10 silicone stretch lids in graduated sizes, costs $15 to $25 as a one-time purchase and lasts 2 to 3 years of daily use. Over that period, the equivalent spending on the 4 consumable products it replaces runs $40 to $60 annually at today's pricing, and that figure rises as input costs climb. The reusable set pays for itself in the first 2 to 3 months of use, and continues generating savings for the entire period of the supply disruption. What most people get wrong is categorizing this as a sustainability purchase rather than a financial strategy. It is both. But in the context of this video, it is primarily a way to permanently exit 4 separate categories of ongoing price exposure. If you are choosing between beeswax wraps and silicone lids, the silicone lids are more durable and more practical for general kitchen use. The beeswax wraps are better for covering irregular shapes. Buy the silicone set first if you can only choose one. Item 15. Petroleum jelly, large industrial size container. We are in the final stretch of this list. Items 15 through 18 are the ones that are almost universally absent from other prep lists. I want you to pay full attention to each of them because the logic behind them is tight and the value to cost ratio is exceptional. Item 15 is petroleum jelly, not the small branded tube in your medicine cabinet, but the large industrial or pharmaceutical grade container. The 500 gram to 1 kilogram size. Plain white petrolatum, unscented, no additives. Here is the math. A 1 kilogram container of plain pharmaceutical grade petroleum jelly costs $4 to $8. That same volume purchased in the small branded tubes you typically see in a pharmacy costs $25 to $40. The product is chemically identical, and the uses for petroleum jelly extend far beyond what most people know. Wound care and minor burn protection. It creates a moisture-retaining barrier that promotes healing and prevents dressing adherence. Tool and blade rust prevention. Apply a thin coat to any exposed metal before storage. Leather waterproofing for boots and straps. Skin protection in cold weather for exposed areas. Lubrication of squeaking hinges and stuck zippers. Fire starting aid when applied to cotton balls. And lip and skin moisture protection as a base layer under any extreme weather condition. Every petroleum-derived product is in the direct pricing risk zone for the same upstream reasons we have discussed throughout this video. Buying the large container now, at commodity pricing, locks in a product with essentially infinite shelf life and dozens of practical applications. Item 16. Physical How-To Reference Library, printed. Item 16 is a physical printed reference library, and this is the one item on this list that almost nobody mentions, and yet it may quietly be the most important. Here is the problem with digital dependency that the 2021 supply chain crisis made visible for the first time at scale. When infrastructure stress hits multiple systems simultaneously, and it does, because power grids, cellular networks, and internet infrastructure all share underlying dependencies on fuel and imported components, your ability to access information online becomes intermittent in exactly the moments when you most need it. A power cut kills your router. A drained phone battery kills your search engine. A cellular tower running on backup fuel eventually drops signal. And suddenly the USDA home canning guide you have never downloaded, the basic plumbing repair manual you assumed you could find on YouTube, and the first aid instructions you planned to look up when you needed them, all of them are inaccessible simultaneously. A physical printed library on your shelf is immune to all of those failure modes. It never needs charging. It never loses signal. It never requires a login. It never goes behind a paywall. It does not become unavailable during a power cut, a cellular outage, or an internet disruption caused by infrastructure stress. The pro tip is specificity. You do not need 50 books. You need 5 to 7 targeted reference volumes. The USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning and Preservation. A basic first aid and wilderness medicine manual, the Wilderness First Aid Handbook or equivalent. A general home repair and maintenance reference. A basic automotive repair guide for your vehicle. And a garden pest management and soil health guide. Those 5 books, sourced from used bookstores, discount retailers, or library sales, cost $30 to $60 as a complete set. They will be on your shelf when everything else goes dark. And that is a purchase with no expiration date and no recurring cost. Item 17. Bulk non-iodized coarse salt, 25 to 50 pounds bags. Item 17 is bulk non-iodized coarse salt, the 25 to 50 pound bags of food-grade coarse salt used for brining, curing, and fermentation. And I want to introduce the third and final framework of this video here, because this item illustrates it perfectly. The framework is called the price lag window, and it works like this. When a supply shock hits a commodity, fuel prices spike, a shipping lane closes, a feedstock becomes more expensive, the price change at the wholesale level is almost immediate. But the price change at the retail shelf level lags behind by 60 to 90 days, sometimes longer because of the time it takes for those cost increases to work through manufacturer contracts. That 60 to 90 day window is the window this entire video is about. And it applies to bulk salt right now with almost textbook precision. Salt is one of the heaviest, most freight cost sensitive commodity staples per dollar of value that you will find in any store. It is mined, it is heavy, it is cheap, and it travels long distances. Those three characteristics, heavy, cheap, long distance, are the exact combination that makes a product acutely sensitive to freight cost increases. The other thing that makes salt unique on this list is that it is the only item here where the purchase decision has literally no downside at any horizon. Salt does not expire. Stored in a sealed container, it is shelf-stable indefinitely. There is no scenario in which buying extra salt at today's pricing is the wrong decision. The worst case is that you bought more than you needed, and it sits in a sealed bucket doing nothing. A 50-pound bag of food-grade coarse salt costs $15 to $25 today. The equivalent volume purchased in small retail packages costs $80 to $120. That is not a projection of future price increases. That is the current retail arbitrage that exists right now between bulk and small package salt. Buy now, store in sealed 5-gallon buckets, and never pay the small bag markup again. And combined with your mason jars, your canning kit, and your yeast, this is the infrastructure that turns your kitchen into a food preservation operation. Item 18. High-quality kitchen knives and manual sharpening stone. Item 18 is a set of high-quality kitchen knives and a manual sharpening stone, and this final item introduces the last principle of this video, which I want you to carry into every tool purchase you make from here forward. The principle is this. When supply chains become unreliable, the correct strategy is not to buy the cheapest option, it is to buy the most durable option once, and then maintain it. Here is why this applies right now with particular urgency. Quality kitchen knives, German or Japanese steel, full tang construction, precision ground edge, are manufactured in supply chains that are already responding directly to tariff increases and freight surcharges. Steel products imported from regions subject to targeted duties face additional cost pressure on top of the underlying freight surge. Tool costs are rising, with many items imported from regions subject to duties of 20% or more, and these items are made of steel and aluminum, both of which were targeted by tariffs in 2025. A quality chef knife, a paring knife, and a sharpening stone bought together as a set for $35 to $70 today, represents a one-time investment in a tool that will outlast every appliance in your kitchen with proper maintenance. The same set at current tariff and freight cost trajectories is likely to run $80 to $140 within 12 months. What most people get wrong is owning 6 cheap knives that dull after 3 uses and get replaced every 2 years, meaning they remain permanently dependent on the supply chain. A good knife maintained with a sharpening stone every few weeks performs better after 5 years than a cheap knife does on day 1. And it requires nothing from the supply chain beyond the 5 minutes you give it on the stone. The pro tip: learn the sharpening angle for your knife before you need it. Western-style knives typically use a 15 to 20 degree angle on each side of the edge. Japanese-style knives use 10 to 15 degrees. 5 minutes of practice on the stone, twice a month, keeps any quality blade at peak performance indefinitely. And if you also use that knife to break down bulk protein purchases, butcher whole chickens at home, or process garden produce at scale, it becomes one of the highest ROI purchases on this entire list. Let me bring this together with the 3 frameworks I introduced today, because these are the tools that make this list actually useful. Framework 1 is the weight-to-value ratio. When diesel prices rise, freight surcharges hit heavy, cheap, imported products hardest. The filter is simple: heavy plus petroleum-derived plus long distance equals buy now, before the price lag window closes. Framework 2 is the manual versus electric principle. In an environment where supply chains for imported components are unreliable, a manual tool that accomplishes the same task has zero ongoing supply chain dependency after purchase. It cannot become more expensive to own. It cannot become unavailable to replace. Apply that filter to every tool decision you make in this environment. Framework 3 is the price lag window. The 60 to 90-day gap between a supply shock and its full retail price expression is not a mystery, it is a predictable mechanic. And it is exploitable by anyone who understands it and acts while the window is open. The people who fare best during any supply disruption are never the ones who panicked at the last minute. They are the ones who moved quietly, methodically, and early, while prices were still normal, while shelves were still full, and while the headlines were still only beginning to catch up to the reality already moving through the system. Every item on this list is available today at ordinary retail prices. Every item has a clear, logical connection to the supply chain and freight cost dynamics currently unfolding. And acting on even half of them this week puts you months ahead of where most households will be when the price tags finally catch up to the cost reality. Drop a number in the comments below, the count of how many items on this list you already have in your home. I genuinely want to know how far ahead of this the people watching this channel actually are. And if you are starting from zero, that is completely fine. Start with items 1, 5, and 17. Powder detergent, canned fish, and bulk salt. Those three cover laundry, protein, and food preservation at the lowest possible cost per unit of protection. Everything else builds on that foundation. The next video I am putting out covers the 12 food items that are heading for the sharpest individual price increases of anything on a grocery shelf right now. 3 of them are going to genuinely surprise you, and one of them is something almost every household buys every single week without thinking about it. Make sure you are subscribed so that video comes to you directly. The window is open. It will not stay open indefinitely. And calm, informed action taken today is worth 10 times the same action taken in a panic. See you in the next one.